Okay, in this talk, we are talking about walking a spiritual path in the world as a lay person. And first of all, when we are walking a spiritual path, we got to differentiate what's the difference between walking a spiritual path and living in the world. When we live in the world, it is different in the sense that we follow the conventions, of the world, right? Wherever we live, there are conventions, there are laws, there are rules in society, the way we behave, when we live in a family, we have, our family customs, the way we behave, and all these are conventional realities, something we come to know through conventions. If we go to another part of the world, there are different conventions to follow, you know. So that's the first thing, to know that we are bound by rules and conventions, of behavior, of the way we speak, and the things we believe. So that's the first thing about the world. In the world, the things that are expected of you, as you are a child, you're a teenager, then you become an adult, and things that are expected of you, and as you go through your primary education, secondary education, tertiary education, and then you get a job, and what is expected of you when you get a job, and to get a car, get a wife, get a house, and so on, So it is a way of life, which you cannot kind of escape through living in the world, in a society. You're expected to have money, You're expected, to support a family, That is what the world expects of you. So when we come to compare the difference between the spiritual life and life in the world, we have to come to admit that there are actually two different lives that we have to live, right? One, where you live in the world, is a kind of life where you accumulate things, where you seek for things, whether it's seeking for fortune, seeking for pleasure, it is the same thing, it is seeking, and a spiritual life is different, right? With a spiritual life, first of all, you have to learn that the way we see, the world is in absolute reality, right? Now, I'm explaining this in terms of the Buddhist, as a Buddhist, when we see the world, we see through Dhamma, through the structures that the Buddha taught, right? So we don't see the world in terms, of convention, we see in terms of what the world is made up, and the Buddha says, the world is made up of these five aggregates, these five khandhas, right? And that's the aggregate, of materiality, rupa. Right? That's the first aggregate. Then there is this aggregate of feeling, which is Vedana. And then the aggregate of Sanya, which is mental identities or perceptions. Mental identity, if you have not come across, is a mental image that you have created about the world within your mind, stored in your mind. You may not have encountered it, but it is something, that's created within your mind, mental identity. I may explain that a little bit more, you've not come across it. And the fourth thing is the world of thoughts, sankhara. And then the fifth, the world of consciousness. Right? So when I'm giving this talk, I'm going to go through, what is expected, of you, when you live in the world, what is expected of you when you walk a spiritual path. I will go through some of the things briefly, and then maybe explain some of the important parts, in a bit detail. Some of the things that I'm going to mention are something that you have come across, you don't have to have an exact definition of it, but if you have an inkling of what I'm talking about, then that is the first good step, right? So we know what is expected of us in the world. Now, what is expected of us when we walk a spiritual life, right? In the worldly life, we have a role to play. Whether you're playing a role, as a son, later on as a friend, and then as a spouse, husband or wife, and as an employee, as an employer, you go through all these different roles, so you adopt different characters. So when you're an adult, you still adopt different characters, different roles, that you play. You play a role as a spouse, you play a role as an employer or employee in a company, and you may still play a role as a daughter or a son, Now you have to understand that these are roles that you play to fit in, within the conventions of society, So when you are with your children, you have to play a role as a father or a mother. You cannot be a manager, trying to manage your children. It doesn't work. Now with the spiritual life, we also have a role to play, right? But slightly a different one, Now, when we lead a spiritual life, there are also certain things that is expected of us. Now, in a spiritual life, we are not seeking anything, right? In a spiritual life, we are not accumulating things. It is the opposite. We are trying to relinquish things, letting go of things. Now, in the worldly life, we seek happiness, we seek joy, we seek serenity, we do it in different ways, People may enjoy going out to a pub, or happiness and serenity by going on holiday, In a spiritual life, we do that as well, but we seek a different kind of happiness, spiritual happiness. We do seek joy, spiritual joy through meditation. Happiness, through meditation. And the same thing, serenity through meditation. Right? So you can see now that the spiritual life and the worldly life are two different paths. Right? So the first thing is do not worry, about, these things. We come to know about the reality of the worldly life as soon as we are born. When we come to study Buddhism, we come to know about the spiritual life. So we slowly, lead a spiritual life, We may lead a spiritual life, say half an hour a day, but through meditation, right? Okay. So we do that. We slowly increase, the time we spend developing our spiritual life gradually and naturally. So the first part of being a good person, is to be good to yourself and good towards others. So that's the first thing that we have to recognize. Whether you live in the world or whether you live a spiritual life, that is the best person that we can be. Now, in a spiritual life, we have a goal. The same as when you are in a worldly life, you have your goals. The goal of is spiritual life is different. There are maybe about 4 goals, that we set ourselves, in broad terms. The first goal is the goal of generosity, dana. This is something that we have to learn, right? Generosity is important. Like I say, when you have generosity, when you develop generosity, it is good for yourself and good for others. Generosity doesn't mean just giving money. The important thing is giving something that you own. There are people I know who are generous, but it's generous with other people's things, generous with the company money, generous with your friends' money, or generous with the society's money. But when it comes to their own money, it's a different thing, right? Generosity has to work with something that you own. Giving up your own time to listen to Dharma talk, or giving your own time to help a friend, help in the society, help in a charity, giving your efforts and time to assist in a monastery, in a temple. And it also means going to a temple, and offer, food, dana, So all these are generosity. That is basic, that is important. That's the first thing. And the second thing, we have to have a particular standard of morality, right? And that morality in Buddhism is defined by the 8 precepts you hold, or 5 precepts you hold, or the well, in the monk's case, 227 rules, the monk's rules, So the 5 precepts, most of you know what the 5 precepts is. When you hold, the most important thing about the 5 precepts is to know, the kind of importance of each precept, like the first precept, a lot of people is concerned about killing, pests, ants, killing the mosquitoes. But what they don't realize that if you could kill maybe 100, 200 mosquitoes, ants, it's not as severe as telling a lie. The damage caused. So you have to know, the severity of each precept. I'm not saying that it's okay to kill mosquitoes. You abstain from doing that, but you must know that being truthful, not telling lies is more important, than killing mosquitoes or ants. So we have to keep the 5 precepts. If you can't keep the 5 precepts, keep 4 precepts. Most of the time, maybe on the weekend, you go out drinking, you cannot keep that precept. That's fine, But slowly, all these things, we start from a position we are comfortable in, and then we improve, from that position. Generosity, keeping precepts, morality, a standard of morality, a standard of ethic. And the third one is important, improving your mind, developing your mind. You see, the mind, the foundation of walking a spiritual path is through a developed mind. So that's something we have to do. We learn a form of meditation, that's samadhi, meditation that will improve your concentration and mindfulness. So you find a teacher, learn a particular meditation techniques, there are actually 40 meditations objects that is recommended, in the Buddhist teaching, So find one that develops concentration and mindfulness. And the last one is panya. That is insight wisdom. That's wisdom that you gain through your own insight. Right? The wisdom that you get from reading a book is just a knowledge wisdom. Right? This insight with the wisdom is slightly different. Something you experience yourself. Spiritual happiness, is like that. Spiritual joy is like this. Serenity is like this. That's the insight wisdom. Knowing, Now, there are foundations, the foundations, in leading a spiritual life. When we live in the world, or when we live, when we are walking a spiritual path, we have our attitudes. Now, our attitudes, in a spiritual life and in the world, are the same. Right? The attitudes that we have, right, is the qualities that we have, in facing, the world or in walking a spiritual path. Now, the foundation, which is very important, in whether you have whether in spiritual life or in worldly life, is the zeal, the passion, the passion for your goals. You want to lead a spiritual life, you have your goals, uh, what I've said before, like dana, sila, samadhi, panya, which is generosity, morality, meditation, and wisdom. You have your ultimate goal, right? You must have the passion for that, the zeal, to achieve something. So that's the foundation. In walking a spiritual life, you must have that passion, that zeal. Say, oh yeah, I want to have say, say, I want to achieve the first jhana, I want to achieve the fourth jhana, But that's the thing, you must have a zeal, a passion for that. It's the same thing, when you did live, you want your first step into the company, whatever company you're going to, So in spiritual life, your goals are different, but you must have that passion, that zeal towards whatever you are trying to achieve. Now, the second one that you need is the energy, the effort, that is the basic. Whether in a worldly life or in a spiritual life, you have to have the energy or put in the effort to get what you want, And the third one is commitment towards that. Worldly life, you have to put in your commitment to achieve something. In a spiritual life, when you're walking a spiritual path, you have to have that commitment as well. And the fourth one that's important is the inquisitive investigation. What I call inquisitive investigation. In a spiritual life, you know, you want to know, you want to inquire, about, this path, right? Uh, Same in the worldly life, you're inquisitive as well, you want to know more, you want to investigate. But in spiritual life, it's much more important. You see, in the worldly life, you just acquire the knowledge, you're inquisitive, you investigate, you research, yeah, and then you find out about, how things operate, how a better way of doing things, But in a spiritual life, you have to gain this inside knowledge through inquisitiveness and your investigation. Right? So these are the four foundations that you must have. First of all, you must have this zeal, that this is an important part. Right? Right? So that's your foundation, so that you have beneath, what other qualities that you develop. You must have the energy, the effort, or determination, that's the second one. And the third one is you must have a commitment, towards your goal. And as you get along that path, you must have this basic, inquisitiveness, about, what is this jhana about, that's the important thing, and also, about holding your five precepts, about morality, about the precept as a whole. Why must you hold this five precept? Why must you have this certain level of morality? You find out that when you hold the five precepts, then you don't have guilt, you have an ethical standard or morality at a particular standard, then you don't have guilt. When you have guilt, your mind is troubled. You don't get happiness. And when you don't have happiness, you cannot get concentration. Okay, so what I have talked about was halfway. I'm going to summarize. Okay, that there's worldly life and spiritual path are two different paths. When you live your life, you have a certain percentage. The 90% of the time you live in the world, 10% of the time you walk the spiritual life, and those percentage changes as you grow. You change as what is required of you naturally. You want to keep your precepts that you do not want to go out and seek happiness as much, or joy as much in the world. You want to seek happiness and joy, spiritual joy, through your own meditation practice. And then the important is the basic foundation, of maintaining that zeal, in your path, that energy, that commitment, and the inquisitive investigation of what you are doing. Now, to step on to the walk, the path, this case, the Buddhist path, you have to have some foundation, about what Buddhism is all about, what the Buddha taught, what is important, what's necessary for you to acquire to be able to walk this path. First of all, the fundamental, you have to know what the Four Noble Truths. There's suffering, there's a cause of suffering, there's the end of suffering. There is a path towards the end of suffering, and the path towards the end of suffering is the Eightfold Noble Path. This is a summary, something which you have to know, and how much you need to know, slowly, you can read a little bit about it, you can read, you actually have to acquire some knowledge of that, The other thing which you need to know is the five aggregates, like I've talked about before, because you in walking a spiritual path have to learn to see, the world in terms of five aggregates. First, the aggregate of materiality. Everything that you see in this world, you can touch in this world, has material form, immaterial form. That it is made of molecules. That's what it means. In the Buddha's time, they don't teach about molecules. They teach about the four elements, four great elements, solidity, cohesion, temperature, and wind. They do it within the scientific knowledge that they know at that particular time. And now we know, we talk about vibrations, we talk about heat, energy, and molecule. So we know that everything that's material, is composed of all these things. Most important thing to know is that material form, is not permanent. It changes. Molecules, within whatever it is, the human body or everything, it changes all the time. So that's material. Then you know what feelings are, what emotions are. That's second aggregate. You know what memories are, what perception is, what mental identity is. A mental identity, some of you may not have come across. What mental identity is something that we create within our mind. We may not know it, but it is something that's real, that exists within our mind. The first thing we come across something, we recognize its shape, we remember its shape, we remember its color, we remember its texture, right? We can also feel it and remember, whether it's solid, whether it's cold, whether it's hot. Also, we add to that mental identity, the mental image, our feelings for it, whether we like it or whether dislike it. It's never seldom a neutral feeling. It is always like or dislike, right? And then we may add to it, a history about it. And then we have already formed a mental identity, right, that lives in our mind. So next time we come across, we try to identify things using our mental identity. So from afar, we see an object, and I try to identify, kind of see through, within our mind, what fits with an image far away, and then you latch on, yes, this is possibly what it is out there, right? But what we have picked up is something within our mind, mental identity. So when the thing is near, we confirm, we confirm the mental identity, right? Although we have a visual image of anything, but what we actually see is our mental identity that we have created, the same thing, that we all have mental identities of the people we know, what they are like. That's a mental identity, plus our view. So that exists in our mind. So you can say our world is made up of this mental identity. Each of us have our own world mental identity. So when we walk this path, spiritual path, we have to understand, we have to see the world differently. We have to see that the world that we see is not the actual world that's outside there, but that the world that we have created, the mental identities that we have created form our world. That's why the world is in trouble. Our world is in trouble. We cannot agree. Even your spouse living together, you always have to have a compromise. And it's only when you live together for a long time, you accept that compromise. Sometimes you may break the compromise, you don't want to have it this way, you want to have it a different way. Right? Yeah. So our world is filled with walls. We have our courts, filled with different cases, and because we all live in a different world of mental identity, right? So that perception, that sanya, in the aggregate form, and the views are it is another troublesome one, Even at the end of this talk, you all have a different view about this talk. You all assimilate different views, according to your understanding and according to your conditioning, about this talk. Right? And consciousness is just a state of your mind, at a particular time. I will talk about the consciousness mind, just to know that the consciousness is just the state of your mind. That's it. That forms five aggregates. So you know the Four Truth, the five aggregates, and then you want to know that the way you come into contact of the world, to come to know the world is through you. First of all, through your five senses, and then you have the sixth sense, that you contact with the mental world, So if you're blind, you happen to be blind, you have to be maybe even hard of hearing or deaf, then your experience of the world is different. If you're colorblind, your experience of the world is different. So each of us experience the world through these six senses. We'll talk more about we come to know more about the world through our five senses, because that's our contact point with the external six senses. And what we receive, are not objects from the world, right? But what our senses are sensitive to, visual images, sounds, smells, taste, right? And tactile sensation, right? Those are the things that we receive from the world, right? And depending on the sensitivity of your six senses or five senses in particular, that you come to know the world different. So when you walk the spiritual path, we come to realize that the reality of the world is different. That's why I talk about the absolute reality of the world. In the conventional reality, we take object as real. A table is real. A person is real. Whatever we think of the person is real. Whether it's good or bad, it is real. But when we walk on a spiritual path, it is different. So when we walk the spiritual path, we always see the world in absolute reality. What I've described so far. But when we interact with other people, we have to use conventional reality because that's the only thing they know. You can argue about a person, whether it's good or bad, you can't really venture into mental identities, your mental identity, their mental identity, they haven't gone into that area yet. Right? They haven't come into contact with Dharma, You can try, but if you trying to engage somebody with the Dharma talk, then you may try. But in the world, usually, you use conventional reality, you have to relate with people within conventional reality. You have to behave, what is expected of you in the world, in conventional reality. Right? So the absolute reality only applies to you. Because what we are changing is our view of the world. Yeah, what we are changing is our mind. We are developing our mind. We are trying to transcend the world. To transcend the world, we have to see the world according to the way the Buddha teaches us, or the Buddha has taught us. Now, in a worldly life, people talk about people doing this, people doing that, but in walking a spiritual path, everything occurs due to a cause. Because of this, that is the effect. And the main cause, is dependent origination. You all have come across it, paticca samuppada, dependent origination. And depending on contact, feeling arises. Depending on feeling, craving arises. Depending on craving, there is clinging. Depending on clinging, there is becoming. You just have to know this part of that. Anytime feeling arises, it is not because you feel. It is because of contact with your own created mental identity, where you have put feelings in there, that feelings arise. When you are craving for something, it is due to feeling. Right? So when you are attached to something, because when you cling on to something, that's because the previous cause is craving. Okay, so another thing else, there's not a person who does the liking. The liking a cause comes through feeling or comes through contact with mental identity. Okay, so those are the foundations that you have to know, in walking this spiritual path. And the last one is the important one is that the world is made up of three characteristics. You know, that everything in the world is impermanent. Everything in the world, when you hold on to it, causes suffering. Right? Everything in the world do not have an intrinsic essence. You know. Okay, that's the final one. That's something we are trying to work towards when you're walking the path. But to really come to have an insight into these three characteristics, we have to develop our concentration and mindfulness. There's one thing to know, the definition of what anicca, impermanence, to know the definition of what anatta, non-self is, to know the definition of what dukkha, suffering is. The definition is just a knowledge, but to come to see for yourself what is impermanent, what is non-self, what is suffering. Old age is suffering, death is suffering. Not getting what you want is suffering. Getting what you do not want is also suffering. Death is a suffering, we know that, but we come to experience that. So it's much easier to see. That's it. And those five things I said is fundamental, But there is another one which is pretty fundamental. That's very important, that whatever we come to know about the world, we see a whole thing. You see a car, you see a person, you see a computer, a whole thing. But actually, that whole thing is made up of parts. Right? We don't realize it. You automatically see the whole thing, and then we make up, oh, this whole thing is nice, But they all made of parts. Whether you have the latest, iPhone or all the model, they are all made of different parts, So maybe in your new phone, 80% of them are the same, maybe only the last 20% is different. You pay a lot of money for that, new 20%, Have to realize they are made of parts. We are made of parts as well. The body is made up of parts. And the Buddha, give us, how we should see things in terms of parts. So the body is made up of 32 parts, And this 32 parts is not really beautiful, they are ugly. So when we see things in terms of parts, then we don't come to be obsessed with the whole thing. We are obsessed with the whole. We keep on creating this mental identity of the beauty of this whole. Right? So when we break these things into parts, then we can see, is there any beauty in this part? Is there any beauty in those parts that comprise the whole? Because it is the beauty that we create within the mind about a thing that is whole that causes to be attracted to it. Right? Or the ugliness that we create that causes to be adverse to it. Right? This attachment and this hate causes a lot of suffering. So we want to try to break down this attachment, this hate. And one of the ways is by seeing the parts of it, breaking down the whole into parts. So you have to know, you have to practice going back again, you have to develop your level of generosity. Slowly, slowly you develop the morality, the five precepts. Slowly you develop your concentration and your mindfulness, your samadhi. That is the important part. To really have insight, wisdom, you have to develop your concentration and mindfulness. You can't really have insight that is useful. You can have insight knowledge, but the level of insight we are talking about is the insights that will change your heart, that will change your heart to see things in the world, in the absolute world, differently. To be able to see the absolute world clearly, the insight that requires to change the heart requires a developed mind, a mind of concentration, a mind of mind. So to really develop your concentration of mindfulness, you have to do the practice of meditation. Going back 20 years ago, maybe 100 years ago, it's difficult to find a teacher. Nowadays, there are lots of teachers. So you can find a teacher, but the practice that you have to do is the practice that lead you to calm concentration, to, so it's where you develop your concentration and your mindfulness. Right? I say find a teacher because it's a bit easier. When you don't know, you can ask your teacher whether you're going the right way or the wrong way. Right? I say find a teacher in this day and age is because there are plenty, there are many teachers. Your teacher has reached a particular level, so you can, reach that the level which your teacher has attained, through practicing the same way, as he or she does. So what I've talked about so far are the foundations that you have. What you need as you carry on walking your spiritual path, or living in the world, is confidence in what you're doing. Believe in the thing that you're doing. Confidence in yourself. See, those are the things that you have to maintain. You have to have all the time. And when you lose confidence, you got to create that confidence in yourself again, by thinking through, you know. You must have put in the effort. There's no question about it, You want to pass your exam, you have to put in the effort, Same thing, you have to have mindfulness. You must have awareness. So even when you're studying for your exam or whatever, you must have awareness of what you're studying. You have an awareness of probably, the probability, that this is going to come out in the examination. And then from this awareness or mindfulness, you get the comprehension, you know. So you have this mindfulness of what you're aware of what you're studying, then you comprehend what you're studying. So when walking in the spiritual life, you got to be aware of what you're practicing. First of all, what you're practicing is, are they leading you towards your spiritual path? Are they leading you forward towards your goal? Are they necessary? The thing that you do. And then you have also to be aware, you cannot do 1,000 things, you say in the worldly life. So in the spiritual path, you have to confine yourself to what? Those things that are necessary to take you along your spiritual path towards your end. The important things. Right? Okay. So you have to weigh the amount of effort, the amount of time that you need to spend. So you may spend 20%, 30%, 40%, of your life walking the path. The 50%, the other half, uh, living in the world. Concentration, you need to have concentration. What it means is a mind that has concentration to be able to focus on what you're doing. You must be able to attend and focus on what you're doing. Right? So that is part, of something that you continually develop as you walk along a spiritual path. And then you must have this discriminating insight, that means insight into things, that whether it is useful, how things work, whether this will help you along your meditation. Right? So the samadhi, the meditation, concentration and mindfulness is an important foundation. Insight will come through that. The insights come from your developed mindfulness, which leads to clear comprehension. And the result of clear comprehension is just simply insight that arises within your heart. So those are the things that you need to maintain, your spiritual path. Now, when you walk the spiritual path, there are actually two paths you're walking in the spiritual path. One is to reduce your own suffering, right? Because you have wrong views, you have suffering. Right? You grasp things incorrectly, you view things incorrectly, then you have this suffering. So the first thing is the path of reducing your suffering, your mental suffering. Right? Whatever, when you suffer, you can't really walk. Walking, the reducing your suffering is one of the spiritual path. The other is actually a path that leads you to enlightenment. And that is part, is saying the three characteristics in everything that you encounter. It's good. Is kind of as simple as that. But to be able to see the three characteristics that in every phenomena that you encounter, you have to have a developed mind. Okay, so the developed mind has to be at least up to a level of jhana. So that's what you have to have. That's your goal. Right. Okay. Okay. That's about it, about a walking a spiritual life in the world, as a lay person. I've talked about the foundation, what you need to maintain it, and the true path, but there are what you actually develop is another talk in itself, it is big, I can just say that what you actually develop, through your practice is to develop the 10 paramis, that's all, that's what you develop, as a lay person. That will have to be another big talk, okay. Now I'm going to take some questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Bante, for the insightful talk. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. Or you can also type in the chat, but just feel free to unmute and ask also. While other questions come, I can ask one. So, can Bante explain a bit about now the percentage we spend on worldly path and spiritual path? They gradually change. So, as we move on, we spend more and more time on the spiritual path. So, in that case, we sometimes let go of some things that are in the worldly path. So how do we make sure that we do it with the right intention and we are not escaping and we are doing it with the insight?
Yes. See, this spiritual path that we tread, we gradually develop, we gradually develop this spiritual path. And we let go of things that we need to let go in order for us to be able to proceed, with our spiritual path, like in the worldly life, we start, we start seeking for things, when we are practicing, we are guarding our senses. That's different. So we are no longer seeking for things outside in the world, for passion, to enjoy or to hate, but we are looking inside ourselves, So in the world, we look outside, to get everything. But in the spiritual part, we look within us to get everything. Okay? Okay?
Okay, Bante.
So when you walk the path, you just need to let go of whatever, that's obstructing your spiritual path. You don't have to give up all, right? Slowly you have to give up, if you find that you go out, into the world, and party, that's going to create a lot of restlessness, or whatever, create a lot of turmoil in your practice now. then it's not going, to parties or whatever that you do, the most important thing that we try to do, whether in the world or walking in the world or walking a spiritual path, is doing something that's good for us and for others. Right? That's the important criteria, what the Americans call the win-win situation. It's a win for others and a win for us as well. So we only let go of first of all, in the worldly path, we don't get attached to anything that creates something that's bad for us. That's really bad for us, whether you're walking a spiritual path or not, it's something that's no good to us and no good to others. We do not get attached to it. And that's the first thing. And there are things that you are attached to that you like, but it obstructs your spiritual path, then you have to let go of it. Right? Slowly, So you extend the time, you spend, walking the spiritual path, like I say, from 1%, to 10%, to 50%, and so on. And can we also look to the world outside as being part of our spiritual path, like true nature, yes, we do. We when we walk the spiritual path, the insight that we get are of different levels. The practice of our spiritual path is of a different level as well. So if you can gain peace, and insight to looking at nature, yes, we do that, whether you get peace, tranquility, that's important as well, on our spiritual path. Like I say, in a spiritual path, we have two paths, right? And you look out into the world, and that gives you peace and less suffering, But that's also walking on a spiritual path. You look at the world, you see the insects, one of the things that I notice is that when about the insects that are dying, I was seeing them all, at the time when they die, fell on the ground, and then they start spinning until they die, and that's what I observe, So looking at that, then I see, for this moth, it's kind of really suffering, and at the end of the day, they get spinning until they die. So that is also an insight, we gain insights, from looking into the world, to see the suffering, When we walk on a spiritual path, you're not looking for pleasure, you're looking at suffering. You stay looking at suffering to see the cause of suffering, right? By seeing the suffering, that will give us the motivation, to practice. Because living in the world is suffering. There's no question. You suffer from the time when you're a baby. As you come out into the world, you may not realize it. All you do is start crying, then your mother will have to figure out what's wrong with you, whether you want a milk or whether you have a tummy ache, So she has to find out, So all you know is you suffer and you cry, because you have pain, whether it's from hunger or from a tummy ache, So as you go along, So you must remember, that when you walk on a spiritual path, there are two paths to walking. Right? One that leads you to enlightenment, and the other one is reducing your suffering. Anything that you can do that reduces suffering, that helps you with your other path of getting enlightened.
I wonder whether Bhante can explain a bit about having a zeal or passion uh, in the worldly life, and sometimes uh, how do we balance having a passion and also uh, being able to let go of things when they don't work out the way we want?
Saying what? Pass.
How to balance having a passion for our goals in the worldly life with
Yeah.
being able to accept that things always don't work out the way we want.
The way you when you're in the world, you want something, that's something that you want, it's good for you, whether you can get it, that's a different thing. So when you want something, you aim for that thing. You aim to be able to obtain that something, and you have to put the necessary effort. You have to acquire the necessary knowledge, right, to be able to get that thing. You have to do whatever that it's doing to obtain that thing, right? So you have a plan, a plan of what you want to do, what you need to do. Most important, the plan of what you need to do to obtain that thing, right? And what you concentrate on is the things that you do. Achieve what you need to do, right? Execute the plan that you have. Whether you get the thing or not, it is something that we do not know. It depends on many things, right? And one of the important things, it depends on your karma. So, right? So what we can do is do all the things that we need to do, that needs doing. So we put our mind into doing things that needs doing. And when we have done everything that we needs to do, or that needs doing, then you see for yourself that itself is an achievement. Whether you get that thing or not, that depends on your karma, right? So you get your if you like, your happiness, your joy from being able to achieve, to do what needs doing. You've done your job. You've done what you need to do. It may be that you do not have the wisdom to know everything that needs to do. That is karma. That's your insight, your wisdom at that particular time. That is your karma. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no old way of overcoming your karma. It is that you are possessed with that. I suppose if you happen to be colorblind in a green color, so it's impossible for you to really become a painter. Totally impossible. That's your karma. That's it. You may try to just paint in say black and white, throughout. You have so so if you can't do that, You know, so plain in just black and white because you can't see, you're colorblind in green, you know. So you do that, you know, just concentrate on what you can do. And then whether your painting sells, you know, in black and white, you know, that's another thing in itself, you know, that's another command. So, okay. Yeah, so plan and then do what you need doing. And then the result is something important. Although the result will affect you, right? Right. But the thing is that you have done, you know, your best. And whether you get it or not, this is it's not up to you anymore. It's not even up to what you have done as well. It just come out. Okay.
Thank you very much.
And when you do that, you know, you find that sometimes, you know, when you do everything you have done, then somebody tells you, oh, you forget to do that, you know, and that's your good karma. Somebody comes and tell you, you know, you forget to do that, and then you work on that, you know, and you have good karma. Somebody will come and help you, right, to be able to achieve, you know. So that's where all the karma comes in. You see, even you know, at the last moment you've done everything, you know, then somebody come and tell you, oh, this is the thing, you know, which you might need or whatever, and then you do it, and then it becomes successful. Or somebody introduce you to a client, you know, or introduce you to an interview, you know, or whatever, or introduce you to a book or whatever, and it becomes successful. That's karma. You have the good karma, good supportive karma, you know. Then at that moment, you know, that karma comes in, and you are able to achieve the goal. Okay, it's nothing to do with you. It has to do with karma, but you still have to put in the effort to do what needs doing. Okay.
Thank you. Feel free to ask, unmute and ask if you have questions.
So that is the what I've talked about is actually the foundation, you know, of the passion, the zeal, right? The zeal. That means the do what needs doing to achieve. So you have that as your foundation. Whatever your goal is, that's your foundation. And what you have to keep up is your faith, you know, in yourself, you know, your confidence, you know, in what you're doing, that you're doing the right thing, and the confidence that you're able to achieve it. That means you put in the effort according to your confidence. You know? So if your confidence 100%, you put in 100% effort. Your confidence only 50%, you have to top up your confidence to 100%. And get 100% effort. Okay, so that's what I talk about. You know, in maintaining your path, you need what in Buddhism is called the 5 spiritual powers or 5 faculties. You know, spiritual powers, and that is confident. I explain it slightly different. Yeah. Okay. So the foundation, according the 4 foundation is the 4 idipada, you know. So yeah, okay. Okay.
Bante, one more question has come from the chat. One question that came is, in your talk, you spoke about breaking precepts will create guilt. How do you advise overcoming the guilt?
Guilt. When you break a precept, you know, when you done, you know, something which is incorrect, you know, it may be, hopefully it's not something major, you know, it's something minor or something medium, you know. Whatever you do, there is always a karma, right? That means whatever you do, good, you will receive the good, you know. And when you break a precept, you do something bad, then the karma or the vipaka, the results will come. Right? That's good. So what you do has an effect. Right? After you've done the thing, it's in the past. You do not have to feel guilty. Right? Guilt is also part of the result of what you have done. But you do not have to feel guilty. You have to say to yourself that it is because of dependent origination, the process of dependent origination, because there's greed, or there's delusion, or there is hate, that you have done it. So you are not responsible, right? The responsibility comes in terms of the karma, right? So you can let go of the guilt in the sense that you have no control of what you do at that particular time, right? Because what you have done is at that particular time, it's not according to your wishes, but it's according to dependent origination. Okay, so to not to feel guilty is to two ways, to forgive yourself, or you forgive somebody who has done something wrong to you, and then you reciprocate, so to forgive yourself and to say that this is something that is unavoidable because you have not developed the mindfulness to be able to check what you're doing. Okay, so when you come to the guilt, you want to learn the way of letting go of that guilt. And one way is to say, that you cannot help it because it's the process of dependent origination, And, in the conventional world, it doesn't sound right, But when you're walking the spiritual path, that's the right view to think. Okay, so long as you don't need, as you mustn't use it as an excuse to do something wrong. You mustn't use it as excuse for not being mindful of what you're doing. You do not use it as excuse to. You have to overcome that defilement. You know what goes wrong, so you have to overcome that weakness in you. Okay. Okay, there is another question. It's not off topic in the sense that when we are trying, part of a path is actually trying to reduce suffering, So when you have a wrong view, that creates suffering in itself. The question is, how do you continue to be kind to someone who has acted dishonestly towards you, towards us, how to prevent the anger, resentment regarding that situation? Okay, I've read the question, so all of you may have read the question. The thing about the world is that the world is we are human beings, and we are not born equal. That's the first thing, because first of all, we have unequal abilities. we are born with different unequal stations in life, Some are born, in a rich family, some are born in a poor family. Some are born in a rich country, some are born in a poor country. So first of all, the concept of we are born equal is not in conventional reality, people accept that. But in absolute reality, we are born due to our karma, due to the karma that we have possessed. Whether we are born in a rich family with certain abilities, that depends on our karma, right? So we are all born unequal. We are all born with different tendencies. There are people who are born with good tendencies. Maybe they have been an angel or a devil in the previous life. And there are people who have really bad tendencies. There are bad people outside in the world. We have to accept that. Previously, they may have been a hell being or asura or whatever being. Then they have the opportunity to be born as a human being. In Buddhism, rebirth is a truth in itself. We don't die. I feel when we die, we adopt another body. Then whatever body we adopt, whether a human being or at what level of birth we are in. So that's the first thing we have to accept, that there are bad people outside. There are good people outside. There are people who are worse than us. There are people who are better than us. That's the first thing. So not accept that is to have incorrect view. And when you have incorrect view, that causes you the suffering. Right? That's the first thing. Yeah. So but this is your own personal absolute view. You cannot tell people out there in the world. The world have their convention of political correctness. Right? That's the convention. So we do not disturb their political correctness. But within our own path, we have to know that there are angels and their helpings in this world. Right? We cannot be kind to everybody. We have to treat everybody as they are. Right? So we don't treat, well, if you want to treat, we don't treat a dog like a human. If you want to treat a dog like a human, you can as well, but not exactly like a human. So you don't treat a bad person, the way you treat a good person as well, So to each person, we have to have a right relationship with them. There are people who will manipulate us. There are people who will cheat us. There are people, who will try to harm us. That is a truth. Right? There is a delusion that to say everybody is good. It's a delusion to say everybody is bad. We have to discover for ourselves what people are like. We may hear stories from a reliable source that this person is like that, but you still have to find out for yourself whether it's true. What the person tells you is their mental identity. Yeah? So what you think or know of a person also, to some extent, is the mental identity that you have formed. Hopefully, that the mental identity that you have formed is true, is correct. Right? So you must know, the important thing is people have tendencies, good and bad. You yourself have tendencies, good and bad. You're not a good person, neither are you a bad person. You are a person that operates according to dependent origination. That's it. Okay, so when you hold to this right view, then you have less suffering. Okay, Can we separate karma into good and bad? Can bad karma still serve much growth and lessons even if it's hard? Or maybe good karma can help you bring you an interview, but this causes anxiety and possibly also harm the positive at the same time. Okay, right. There are two things in that question about good and bad karma. Uh, a bad karma, a good karma, when it comes up, you're happy, you get what you want. The bad karma comes up, then you don't get what you want. Then you suffer. Then you have to learn from that. So first thing is that you try not to create bad karma. But whatever karma that is the result of bad karma, you have accepted. But you learn from it. That's the first thing. Second thing is you can find out how what went wrong. If you cannot, it doesn't really matter. There are lessons to learn. You know it. Now the other question about anxiety is different. Anxiety is because you expect a result, right? That's it. Every time you expect a particular result, anxiety arises, whether good or bad. It is the expectation that causes the anxiety, nothing else. See, so to overcome the anxiety, you just say not sure to the outcome of it. Then you become equanimous. Then it doesn't cause any anxiety. So every time you think, what's the result of this interview, you say not sure. But you have a plan, you're prepared, like I said, So every time you want to think that the interview, the result of the interview is going to be bad, or whatever, the result of something, then you say not sure to yourself. Right? Because that's actually the true state of the result. We cannot be sure. When we say not sure, it is empty of success and failure. Right? So it's an emptiness in itself. It's the mind. It cannot create anxiety from that. So you have to convince yourself the true state of the outcome of an interview is not sure. That's the reality. You may think you've done a good interview. That's what you think. That's your perception. What the interviewer thinks is different. Your perception is, oh, you don't answer the question correctly. You're missing the point or whatever, different. Your perception, you may say, oh, I've done a bad interview. But the other person might think, well, he's struggling, but he did give, towards the end, he gave the right answer. So he had a positive outcome. To him, it's positive. So we do not know, right, the outcome of an interview. So whatever result, the reason why we do not expect is a result is because the result in itself is actually not true. Tomorrow, what is going to happen is truly not true. We do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. We do not know what's going to happen 7 a.m., next day, or for you all, 7 a.m. today. We have no idea. I'm not sure. Okay? So this is coming to, you can see, Bhante has a YouTube about the Dharma coasters, you know. In that, Bhante created, you know, kind of 6 Dharma coasters, you know, of something that you study, you know, and then practice, you know. And one of them is not sure, you know. Okay, that will help. Any other question?
Maybe I'll ask a last question because Bante talked about our karma and tendencies. We have strong tendencies. How do we overcome these tendencies?
If we have these bad tendencies, then it is something we have to work on. It is, you have to see whether it's a good or bad tendency. If it's that bad tendency, then it is a defilement. So it is a defilement that we either suppress it or, you know, we use insight, you know, to eliminate it. Okay. Each tendency will require a different solution. Supposing you have this tendency to laziness, that's a difficult tendency, laziness. Then we have to find ways, you know, of overcoming those tendencies. You know, that itself is a huge, you know, a topic itself. You know, overcoming each tendencies that you have. You know, overcoming lust. You know, it's a tendency as well. There are you know, there are many different solutions to it. You know. Overcoming sleepiness, you know, overcoming hate, resentment, you know, overcoming attachment. Each itself is a big topic in itself, you know. So we have to find ways of doing it, you know. If you have a correct view, you know, then you can reduce those tendencies. You have to develop your mind to be able to overcome those tendencies as well, you know. So the 6 Dharma coasters also help you to reduce that tendency as well, you know. But you must acknowledge the tendencies, face it, and find a solution to it, you know. If you can't, then you have to ask your teacher. Uh, each tendencies will require a different solution, and the solution also depends on the person itself, you know. So it's complex then. Okay, but we definitely have to work at it because it's causing us suffering, you know, or it's taking us towards the wrong path. Yeah?
Okay, Bante. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we can finish this session. I'll chant a little blessing before we end this session. Bhavatu Sapa Mangalang Rakhantu Sapa Devata Sapa Buddha Nupavena Satha Suti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sapa Mangalang Rakhantu Sapa Devata Sapa Thamma Nupavena Satha Suti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sapa Mangalang Rakhantu Sapa Devata Sapa Sanghanu Pavena Satha Soti Pavantu Te.
Sad. Thank you very much, Bante, for giving us the teachings in early morning. And thank you very much, everyone who joined us. See you next time. Thank you.
Okay.